Good evening. Our encounters tonight include a look at the phantom plains of the Peak District. That's a little later. Ever since the first photograph was taken, researchers have tried to capture the ultimate image, the paranormal on film. The invention of camcorders has stepped up the search. Every couple of weeks or so, a new video clip generates a fresh wave of excitement. After all, the camera doesn't lie. Or does it? Tonight, we examine evidence of the paranormal captured on camera. Pictures that can be explained and those that can't.
On its unknown aircraft, T1 Control doesn't know what type of aircraft it is either.
Flying saucers, ghouls and phantoms. Fact or fiction? Will we ever be sure? One thing is certain, this is a fake. 60 years after this picture of the Loch Ness Monster was taken, one of the team behind it admitted it was a hoax. Nothing more than a model monster powered by a toy submarine. These pictures convinced and baffled a generation after World War I. The so-called Cottingley fairies had even persuaded Sherlock Holmes author Arthur Conan Doyle. But 65 years later, Elsie Hill, one of the two cousins who took the pictures, finally admitted it was all a fake. These types of hoaxes come as no surprise to the founder of this magazine, who's made a career out of debunking paranormal stories.
These are classic cases of things that have deceived people. When we look at them today with now decades of experience of looking at photographs and special effects on movie screens, they look very fake.
In my experience, I've never actually seen either a paranormal picture or ghostly image that's not been faked or worked on. If you take the Cottingley fairies, you have the young lady looking at a fairy. Although her eyes are actually quite far away, you have a mismatch of focus. The fairy is very close to her, yet she's looking far away.
So just how easy is it to mock up a convincing photo? Student photographer Ian Lott took these pictures. A UFO over Worcestershire. Ian's photos began as two paper plates simply wrapped together in silver foil and suspended from cotton. He photographed that and in the darkroom superimposed the image onto a background of open countryside. The result, a passable image of a flying saucer.
The thing that happens if you have researchers who really, really want to believe in something is that they can be inclined to see what they want to see rather than what's actually there.
This looks like a flying saucer and fooled many until the photographer admitted it was nothing more than a car hubcap. So how do you tell whether a picture has been faked?
If you look at any image, it's quite possible to pick up telltale signs such as eyes not focusing, such as different contrast levels, such as different lighting techniques.
Paranormal researchers have also pointed to photographs, such as this one taken in Raynham Hall, Norfolk, as evidence that ghosts exist.
I love this photograph. I think it's a great photograph. There are so many techniques for double exposures and everything else that it's really hard to take it seriously as a genuine photograph of a ghost.
Here's another ghostly apparition, but this is another of Ian Lott's fakes.
All I done was just take a picture of somebody walking down the stairs, then reshot the same photograph without the person on the stairs, and it actually gave them a translucent image.
This picture caused a storm when it was published. Does it show the ghost of a young girl pictured in the burnt remnants of Wem Town Hall in Shropshire?
The image of the young lady standing on the balcony, you can quite clearly see on the midriff, on the shoulders, through her arms, there has been a double density, almost the image coming through the bars, which is typically where you would lay one image on another. And all these things point to, certainly in the Wem pictures, that there has been possibly some double image or double exposing, which gives it that impression of a ghostly image.
Writer and photographer Robert Irving produced this photograph only to find it the center of worldwide stories about aliens landing on Earth. Robert created the picture to illustrate an article he was writing for Fortean Times about an Italian UFO scare.
As soon as the article came out, the Italian media jumped on it, basically, and published it, portrayed it as genuine. A photograph of a UFO in a hangar seemed to be exactly what they needed.
The whole thing was so easy to do. Robert created his photograph on a computer. Modern programs allow you to manipulate any image.
The scope of these things is unlimited. Anything can be done. The only limits are the imagination, really. Basically, I just took a lot of care recreating the struts in front of the flying saucer. It gave it an added extra realism.
Trick photography is nothing new, and there are many reasons why people go to such lengths to fake photographs.
I figured that we could all do with a photograph of a UFO in a hangar. I did it for fun.
But what about photographs that are genuine but simply misleading? For example, this one, apparently of a UFO.
To me, this is a great example of a picture that was not taken in order to deceive anybody, but is extremely deceptive.
In fact, the US government released the image to show how easily people can misinterpret what they see in the sky. Actually, it's a B-36 bomber taken from an unusual angle.
The belief that the camera never lies is completely wrong, and photographers have always known this.
Moving images present the same difficulties. Is this a UFO, or is there a more mundane explanation?
It's quite common that you'll get an effect of a light appearing in the lens, sort of hanging in the sky. This can look like a square or diamond shape, or even a pentagon. That's actually caused by stray light coming into the lens and being reflected off the internal surfaces of the lenses, and you get a mirror image inside the lens of the lens iris unit. And in effect, you're seeing something that isn't really there.
Objects apparently moving of their own free will, filmed from the space shuttle, caused excitement among UFO researchers. But in fact, they could be explained away as shuttle debris and waste being ejected into orbit. And what about this picture, apparently of a face in Mars, taken by a NASA space probe? Is it a natural formation or something built by a race of Martians? The idea that human beings have a large primate cousin was given extra credence with this film of the creature known as Bigfoot, taken in North America. But what do scientists think?
I first saw that clip about 30 years ago, and I thought it was a hoax then, and I think it's a hoax now. It looks very much to me like a man in a monkey suit. The limb proportions and body shape are entirely human. The gait is human with a few exaggerations, a bit of extra arm swinging and so on. The most convincing thing was the way that the coat ripples. The coat is not attached, as it were, to the underlying flesh.
And what about this? Is the idea of a flying saucer over Manhattan just too strange to be true?
I really think if there were a flying saucer barreling around Manhattan, first of all, the comedian David Letterman would be out getting it on his show. Second of all those tourists on the Empire State Building would be taking lots of pictures of it. It's just hard for me to believe that in a city the size and never sleep character of New York, it would be hidden.
But there are some items that still intrigue and baffle once hoaxes, photographic mishaps and anomalies are ruled out. This photograph of a Navy unit taken in 1919, for example. Despite extensive analysis, no one has come up with an explanation for the presence of the apparition in the back row, a former member of the unit who'd been killed 3 days earlier.
When I first saw this photograph, I assumed it was a fake. In the back row, the chap fourth from the left, looking over his left shoulder, there's the ghostly face of a naval mechanic, Freddie Jackson, who'd been killed in an accident some 3 days earlier on the base. He'd walked into a propeller. The photographer, as far as I know, wouldn't have been aware of this accident.
Make up your own mind about these UFOs filmed in Las Vegas by Englishman Ray Wardle.
For some reason, I went up onto the roof of the garage at work and started filming what I thought was probably two planes coming into land, until one dived very, very fast towards the ground. Then some minutes later, a third one comes along, which is probably 2 to 3 times the size. These two objects, which are floating around, they seem to lock onto it. A few minutes after that, there is an aeroplane going into land at McCarran Airport. So now we know that these aren't airplanes. I've had it analysed, and nobody has come up with any logical explanation of what it is. I've had people suggest that it's a hoax. Well, if it is, I didn't hoax it.
We acquired this unknown object, aircraft some type, one, and appears to be going outbound real slow. There's hardly any range velocity.
But perhaps the most remarkable UFO footage to surface in recent years comes from an official source, the United States Air Force. These pictures were taken in the sky above the top-secret Nellis Air Base by the Air Force's own cameras. The footage has undergone rigorous examination and continues to baffle the experts.
I'm familiar with footage taken by these kinds of cameras at this test range, and it does look extremely authentic, so I think a fake or a hoax is unlikely. What's interesting is the reaction of the observers you can hear in the background here.
Where'd it come from? Way down. On this unknown aircraft. T1 control doesn't know what type of aircraft it is either.
These people are used to seeing hundreds of aeroplanes cross this test range every day. They know all about military jets, yet what they're seeing clearly baffles them. And when you look at some of the data that's scrolling in the screen, you can tell, for instance, it's hopping about all over the place. It's staying stationary, it then moves off very fast. It's doing things that no normal aeroplane would do, so it's pretty baffling. It is, in the strictest sense of the word, an unidentified flying object.
We don't know what it is. That doesn't mean we can't know what it is, and it doesn't mean that people who study it can't find out what it is, and it doesn't mean that there's no natural explanation. It just means that it's unidentified.
The US military refuses to comment on that footage, which was said to have been secretly smuggled out of the base. Until they do, or someone else comes up with a plausible explanation, this will remain one of the most intriguing mysteries in the files of unexplained images. After the break, the phantom plains of the Derbyshire Peaks. Where would you expect to find a ghost? Somewhere historical, usually. Gothic castles, creepy graveyards, and old country houses are favourite. Comparatively newfangled things like aeroplanes don't often get a mention. But airborne apparitions are what witnesses claim to have encountered in tonight's second story. The Derbyshire Dales, where swirling mists descend almost daily to swallow up those brave enough to venture onto the hills. In the skies above, the dense fog can be just as treacherous and unforgiving. Littered with crash sites, the peaks are a graveyard for more than 200 aeroplanes. Many of the crews who lost their lives were returning from wartime bombing missions, young men who weren't ready to die. The tragic nature of their deaths may account for the Peak District's long history of mysterious sightings. For Sheffield postman Tony Ingle, the peaks provide an escape from city life. Last summer, he saw something that he couldn't explain.
Took the dog up the lane for a walk, got so far up, and then I suddenly saw this plane out of the sky coming down the valley. And it was very, very eerie. The propellers were going around, but there was no sound. And it was dipping all the time, as if it was getting lower and lower. And I thought, crikey, this thing's going to crash. And as I looked over the edge, I thought I'd see the plane. There was no plane. So I just looked, and there was just lambs and sheep in the fields. The best way to describe it was as if someone had died and he'd moved into a room, and it was just like death. It was terrible. It was a very eerie sensation, not very nice at all. And since then, we've tried to get him up the lane, and he just won't have it. He'll just cower down at certain areas, and you've got to visibly pull him up. And we've tried it with myself going up the lane with a dog, my wife going up with the lane with a dog, and friends, and he just won't have it.
Come on! Was Ben displaying evidence of the sixth sense that many animals are believed to possess? A few Dakotas are still flying today. Maybe that could explain what Tony saw.
Well, we've got 11 Dakota aircraft, and therefore that makes us certainly the largest Dakota operation, civilian Dakota operation in the world, in fact. And we checked into the flight time details that you gave us, and we found that none of our aircraft were airborne, let alone in the area that you specified on the time in question.
The only other British Dakota that could have been flying at the time belonged to the RAF. It was airborne that day, but 150 miles away. So no Dakotas had been flying in that area at the time of Tony's sighting. But one had crashed there 50 years earlier.
Yeah, 15 to 5, that was embarrassing. Well, at a ground crew...
A crew of US servicemen prepare to board a C-47 Dakota at Leicester East. The war in Europe has just finished, and spirits are high.
It had something to do with your pitching.
Oh, yeah?
Well, if you're going to throw a curveball, I mean, I don't want to criticize.
Come on, don't spare me.
If you're going to throw a curveball, you want to put some curve on it.
Uh-huh.
That's something... Hey, how you doing?
Hi there, lads. My name's John.
John, I'm George.
Pleased to meet you, George.
Earl.
Pleased to meet you, Earl.
What can we do for you?
Well, a little bird tells me that you lads are flying up to Scotland, Renfrew.
As a matter of fact, we are.
Well, you see, the thing is, I'm looking to visit my mum, who's in Renfrew, and I was wondering if you might have room for a little one. And the Jeep, of course.
And the Jeep as well?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we usually got room for a small Scotch, John.
All right, you're on.
Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, you ready? You got the pins and rudder lock?
Yeah, down the pins, doing the lock.
All right. And you guys, we're gonna get you next time.
No chance.
With their extra passenger, RAF serviceman John Dunlop Main, the US airmen set off for Renfrew, north of the border, on a purely administrative mission.
One clear. Let's find out where we are. God, we're too low. We're too low. Pull up. We're gonna crash. Hang on for a crash landing. We're gonna hit.
Official papers record the roll call of the dead: 6 American servicemen and 1 British.
I was very shocked to hear that the plane had crashed in this area and that people had been killed.
The mystery deepened after Tony's story appeared in the local paper. Others wrote with their own sightings of phantom planes in the peaks. The earliest dated back to 1948.
I must have been about 7 or 8 when I saw the plane. I remember it because I'd been interested in planes from a very early age. I preferred them to dolls.
Mummy?
Young Audrey Twigg had been with her mother in the Hope Valley when she saw something.
Sandwich, you've hardly eaten anything.
I can see one that's just up there.
Your eyesight's better than mine.
Look.
What baffled me mostly was the fact that Mum couldn't see it.
Do you want a cheese?
I think the strangest thing was how low it was.
Weather's turning.
Could Audrey's sighting all those years ago be part of the same mystery as Tony's encounter? Paul Booth and Stephen Lewis devote their time to piecing together the history of the tragedies.
In my research, I found that a lot of these phantom sightings was actually taking place in areas where the actual aircraft have crashed.
But what about the Hope Valley, where young Audrey made her sighting?
There was a Airspeed Oxford crashed in the Hope Valley, and the young pilot was only 19-year-old, and he was doing his first solo navigation flight, and he took off in clear weather, and a cloud came down as it is today, and he descended through the cloud to try and find his position, and the aircraft flew straight into the moor.
Tony Ingall's story also brought more recent sightings into the open. Verena Bishop from Sheffield had her own strange experience in 1994.
It was a Thursday afternoon in March. I was walking from Hope along the Castleton Road. Something made me look up into the sky, and seemingly just above my head was this plane. There was no sound whatsoever. The wing must have been directly over my head because I just saw the fuselage. And I thought it's going to crash. I had to duck. It was so low, I thought it's going to hit me. It just skimmed over the fields, and about the second field disappeared completely. So I thought, perhaps there's a hollow in the field, that it's gone down there. However, I waited for an explosion, but nothing happened.
In fact, a plane had crashed in exactly the same spot 51 years earlier. Farmer Joe Ayres saw it go down.
I was taking a load of coal up to a farmhouse apparently the plane crossed a cement works quarry exceedingly low, and it must have come in a straight line and plunged straight into this bank and blew up.
There are still hollows marking the plane's impact. 5 airmen have been on board a Wellington bomber flying from Wellesbourne, Mountford, near Stratford-upon-Avon, in 1943. But Verena Bishop had no idea a Wellington had gone down in that field.
When I heard about the history, I was amazed to find later that there had been a crash in exactly the same spot as I'd seen it. It was quite eerie, having had that experience.
Aircraft historian Gerald Scarrett tells of a macabre twist to the ghost plane stories. He's investigated crashes for more than 40 years, among them the loss of a giant Super Fortress bomber.
The B-29 crashed in November 1948 on Bleaklow, which is the biggest hill at the back of Glossop, 1,600 feet above sea level.
Gerald's fascination with the history has taken him on numerous visits to the scene of the crash.
It was my birthday, 1974, and just scratching about in the wreck. It had been raining very hard, and when it rains very hard, it kind of sieves all the small pieces. And I bent down, and I thought it was a brass washer, and when I picked it up, it was a ring. I wiped the peat out of the inside of it, and it had a name on, Landon P. Tanner. I knew all the names of the crew, and he was the pilot. And I sent it back to the States.
It was on a routine reconnaissance photo mission from RAF Scampton.
Well, with me finding the ring, these chaps from Birmingham who do this kind of thing in Snowdonia got in touch with me. She said, can we come up and can you show us the wreck? I said, yes. So they came up, and I took them up to the V-29.
They found one of the crew's watches smashed, and it had stopped at 10:50 the time.
One of the lads said, whereabouts did you find the ring? And I said, here. And I kind of bent down to show him the exact spot. And the next thing I looked up, and they were kind of 10, 15 yards away. And they just scarpered off them more like scared rabbits.
Where are you going?
They were just ashen-faced and left me there. And it's quite away from the road.
When Gerald caught up with them, they told him what they'd seen.
I said, what are you doing there? They said, believe it or not, there's someone standing behind you looking down with full flying uniform on.
Hey, what's up?
And I turned around, obviously, and saw nothing. And they said,
hey!
Well, we've seen it, we're going. And they shot off the moor. Thanks for bringing us. And they went. And I've never heard from them since.
Some believe there are lost souls on the moors. If this should be the case, at least attempts are now being made to lay them to rest. In May 1995, a memorial service was held on top of Bleaklow for the airmen who died in the Dakota crash. 9 months later, the tragic victims aboard the Wellington were remembered with the laying of a plaque in the Hope Valley. There are more memorials planned, but since those commemorations, there have been no reported sightings of the Wellington. The Dakota hasn't been spotted either. For all that, Tony Ingle says his dog Ben still won't return to the site of the crash. Good night.